Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Understanding Room. As always, I'm Mike T, and on the other end, I got my big buddy from the RGV on down there. Just say what's up to the people one time, Odie.
Hey guys, good evening. I'm glad to be back here with you all. I hope you all are enjoying this as much as we are. And yeah, we want to get started and maybe some feed y'all some knowledge.
Yeah, of course. As always, man, me and Odie we just tell you guys that we want to try to open everybody's minds to how important history is and how history has a tendency to repeat itself. Um, so we're going to start out by talking about the impact of how the slave trade got started, and how tribes were coerced into wars so that the prisoners that they were captive or getting captive were being sold or traded, um, for other goods and services or goods, and minerals or like gold and stuff like that. So, um, it goes to show you that, you know, Africa was a really rich country. It had, all these different tribes. They lived, lots of them lived in peace amongst each other. Some lived, outside of that, but they still were relatively peaceful. Um, and I think Odie brought up a couple episodes back how, the Islamic uh, slave trade started first in Africa, and then it became more widespread through the Europeans that came through and started using Africans as slaves in the Americas to produce more of their goods and services like cotton and tobacco and other goods that they had in the Caribbean. Um, but Odie, what do you think? Like, how do you think, or what is your take on how uh, the African slave trade and the tribes going to war? How do you think that there's a correlation to that, or do you think it was something that just happened and got started along the way?
Yeah. So you know, the, it started with in the 1500s mainly with the invasions, the crusades, the religious invasions of Africa.
Mhm.
But you're right. One of the first things that we start seeing is that um, the Europeans, the Christians, the ones that are supposed to have God and their morals on their side, will make treaties with certain tribes, and then as they make treaties with the tribes, they're promising one tribe, you know, heaven and earth, if they can capture another tribe, which is their enemy tribe, and sell them as slaves, and then they turn around and betray the first one because now there's not enough people to help them, to suppress the invasion, and ultimately they get turned into slaves as well. That's something that we always see where people are being tried to turn against each other. One of the things that I found really uh, really interesting, and it was something that I get asked all the time, because a lot of people always ask, well, why was it that they brought the slaves from Africa? Why didn't they take Native Americans, or other people as slaves? And uh, one of the things that I found about the slave trade is that they actually did try to enslave Native Americans too. It was actually all because of a priest. There was a priest that was one of the first people to come to the Americas. He wasn't happy with how they were treating the Native Americans. So he wrote to the Pope and told the Pope, "Hey, look, even though these savages are not not as good as us, they're closer to humans than the Africans are. They're closer to humans than those brutes, those savages are. So we should try to convert them or at least end their suffering versus using them as slaves. And that's really what started kicking off the slave trade from going just to Europe to bringing, the slaves from Africa to the Americas as well. That I found really, really interesting because, um, this priest who's supposed to be the voice of God to his people condemned one to death and condemned the other to slavery.
Wow. and the thing that I found interesting in my research was how, and like you said, like all of this started in the 1500s, but you got to understand that Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492. And he was supposedly en route to India for spice. But then he got to the Americas and saw that the abundance of tobacco and hemp and all these other things that they were able to send back into England, and that King Henry, King George, or whoever it was at the time, was pleased with these things. It was like, hey, how do I get more of this stuff? Because we don't have that kind of stuff here in abundance, and how do we get, like I said, in more of this in abundance. So it goes, like Odie said, it starts with something as small as people wanting something, and then they expand it into wanting more and more and more and more and more and more until it's I'm trying to be as kind about it as I can, but it's basically, like we said before, it's pillaging. It's essentially all it is. And they justify it by saying, oh, well, we claim this in the name of King, and you can't walk into someone's backyard and say this is belonging to somebody else now. These people have been living here for generations and set up establishments and complete civilizations. And one day, these people who essentially got lost show up and they're saying that this is theirs. I don't see how that worked, but okay, so
Not just that, but the underhandedness of it. Like for example, we a lot of the arguments from the opposing side that I've heard is, well, they did it all legal, they followed the law. Yeah, but if the people making the law are the ones committing evil, does that law really, is that really a law? We talked about how supposedly they were being brought to the Americas. Eventually certain countries, certain locations, certain places started abolishing slavery. And one of the things that I found was that when Europe had abolished slavery, they were still sending slaves to America. So they were still selling the slaves. They just didn't allow slaves in Europe. And what they would do, because they couldn't do slavery anymore, is they started baptizing the people in Africa as they were getting on these boats. They would take them, by baptizing them, they were saying, well, they're not slaves. We're giving them Christ. We're giving them this religion. So they're indentured servants to us. And they're going to serve us for only a period of time. And then we'll let them go free. And then they get to America, they sell them, and now they're slaves. It's ridiculous how we can justify that as, well, it was legal at the time. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're the one creating the laws, then and there's nothing there, there's no one there to oppose you, then how can you say that those laws are justified?
Exactly. And I know you remember the debate that we got into, what was it, a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, and that was actually one of the actual comebacks or responses that I got to that was, well, technically it was legal. Well, I mean, you can't call it legal when you force someone out of their home, strip them of their name, their heritage, their culture, give them a name that they weren't born with, and you take them from their land and you make them work for you.
I
How is
mean,
that legal?
just to put it into perspective, in grand total, there were 12 million people, and this is just the ones that they can have records of. 12 million people taken from Africa into the Americas. Now that includes all the Americas. You know, the United States, Canada, Mexico, and below Mexico, Venezuela, Paraguay, Uruguay, Cuba, Brazil, et cetera, et cetera. But that's still 12 million people.
Mm-hmm.
You are taking, like, that would be like completely displacing what a not a gigantic city, but an average size city. That would be like taking everybody. I think my city in FAR, we're about 13 million to 15 million. That's taking everybody in FAR and just throwing them to somewhere where they don't know, where they have no roots, they've never been, and they're being forced to do labor. That is ridiculous to me. There was a documentary that I was watching a while back that talked about this, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this or talked to you about this, but you know, the documentary, the person that directed it, one of the comments he said is, I don't think there will ever be a time in which we feel like we can move forward until there is reparations. And I get told all the time, why do they want reparations? Because 12 million of them got taken from their home and got put in a place where they knew nothing of for generations. I mean, the worst part is that even when you give that type of argument, we still have people that don't want to acknowledge that fact.
I mean, and again, it's like I said last week, you're basically robbing those people of their experiences when you undermine or talk down on what they went through. Again, like you can't tell a person or a group of people what it's like or what something is not like just because you haven't experienced it, or because you can look at it from one side and say, oh, okay. Like, I'll say this past winter storm that we had, several thousand people went without lights, water, you know, some even didn't have food. And during that time where the roads were practically ice, snow, couldn't travel on, people were looking for relief, for aid, and some were not receiving it. Now, when I say this, there are people who went through this of all races, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, you know, Muslim. Doesn't matter. We all suffered through this. We all had to endure it, except if you're Ted Cruz. And with all of that, like after all it was done, people were waiting for relief. And I look on Twitter, look on Facebook, and all of these people are like, man, we're supposed to have all this stuff. We don't have this, we don't have that. We need this. Why isn't anyone doing anything? And I simply made a tweet that says, to all these people who are requesting all of these relief and not getting it, this is what it's like for those who are minorities who have been going through this for generations. You just experienced a minute part of what it's like to be a minority. And some people took it as a wake-up call, and some people took it as me just trying to be no, I'm sorry, how do they say it? Pushing a political agenda.
See, and that's where I think a lot of people are mistaken. Minorities fighting for their rights is not a political agenda. It's fighting for their rights. I could care less if who is the president, what party they're from, if they're not doing and upholding what the beliefs of the country are, what the Constitution promises, then they have to be held to that same standard. Going back to the slavery, it was Christians that did that. It was all the Christian countries that were doing that. It was Europe, it was America, it was the Spain, Rome. All of them were the ones that were profiting over the blood, sweat, and tears and land of others. So, do I care if my president is a Christian? No. My president could be a Muslim. My president could be a Jew. My president could be, a Buddhist. I could care less what religion the president says they practice, or if they're atheist, as long as they're upholding what the government is supposed to do and what our country is supposed to be, which is completely different from a political agenda. We're not pushing anything that should be a political issue. We're pushing something that should be a basic right.
Mm-hmm. And social issue is what I like to see it as. It's an inequality of social justices. And again, going back to the slavery thing, and like we've mentioned before, Haiti, I mean, not too just a few decades ago, just finished paying off reparations to a country that held them hostage and held their ancestors as slaves. So I'm trying to understand how the people who were doing the atrocities are trying to get reparations from the people whose bodies were subject to physical hardships and labor. But those who are ancestors of the people who suffered get talked down to, get laughed at, get dogged out, get their whole heritage and culture dragged through the mud because they want reparations. And it's I don't see how that is so much different than a country who held people as hostages, but still they got reparations. Don't understand that.
It's all going back to that narrative. Like one of the going back to slavery, slavery in itself was bad, but what was worse is what happened to the whole continent of Africa. And, once 12 million of its people were gone, that really left Africa defenseless. We get to a point where Great Britain, where I can't remember if it was Sweden. No, it wasn't Sweden. It was I can't remember which country it was, but the ruler of the country, which was way smaller than it, got the whole Congo. it made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of the Congo and rubber that was being mined there. The atrocities that were being done, how they were forcing the people that weren't sent as slaves to America were being forced to stay in Africa and still work for free. Um, to the punishment, if they didn't work for free, they would cut off their hands and kill off their family. And whenever they were done with the land, whenever it was barren and a desert, then they would build a wall, build a wall to keep them out and let them starve out in the desert. These were, again, Christian countries that were doing that. This wasn't, we tend to demonize people from other religions. Nah. Let's talk truth. Let's talk truth. That was Christian countries. So I am Christian. I've said it in another video. I truly am a Christian. I believe in Christ. I believe in the Bible, but I also believe that in order to serve as a Christian, we have to fix as a people what we've done wrong.
Absolutely. And I can't remember the quote that you said a couple episodes ago, and it says, we can't have, it was all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. And with that, it goes in what he was just saying. You can't sit here and say, oh, we want equality, we want this, but but this side is, important, and that side, everybody's important, and everybody's voice matters, and everybody should definitely have a say. But we should definitely keep those people accountable who are doing things that they aren't supposed to be doing. The people that we are putting in positions of making laws, upholding laws, and protecting our laws are the people that are ones that are breaking the laws. You know what I mean? And this is going, now we've talked about slavery. Once slavery was over, you had these millions of newly freed people who, like Odie said, had been taken away from their home, had been kept in one centralized place, haven't been able to go very far. They don't have anything much to their names, and now all of a sudden they're free. And they're supposed to make a living off of the nothing that they were given when they were free. They were told that, oh, you'll have this, and we'll get you this, and we'll make sure you have that, and didn't see anything. And so, like Odie said, you have these millions of people with nothing to their names. And then you wonder why people are always talking about, hey, reparations should be handed out for that. You took people from their land, you made them work for other people on their land, profiting for them, being brutally mutilated for a lack of work or refusing to work. And you have to understand that in itself, like you said, it's wrong. Like these were people, these were breathing, living people, and they were subjected to the worst conditions, treated in the most inhumane ways. And it's crazy that people still just want to just be over, just like, oh, it was so long ago. No, it really wasn't that long ago. If you think about it, in the grand scheme of this country, it wasn't that long ago. And go ahead.
200 years in the scheme of the whole history of the world. The world is 4 billion years old. This was 200 years ago. That is nothing.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, once these people were free, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history And to those that praise Abraham Lincoln, yes, he had some good policies. Yes, he did some good. But what a lot of people don't know is the motivation behind his good. Abraham Lincoln, when the Civil War first started, Abraham Lincoln, well, okay, let's back all the way up. When the Civil War started, it started because Southern states were upset or in fear of the federal government impeding on their states' rights. That's what the Civil War was about. It had nothing to do with slavery. It had nothing to do with the freedom of slaves. It had nothing to do with that. Because Abraham Lincoln said, and I quote, "If I can preserve the Union and not free one slave, I'll do it. If I can preserve the Union and free every slave, I'll do it." The man didn't care whether or not slaves were free. In fact, he owns slaves. Here's another piece of history that you probably didn't know, and it's probably because it got swept under the rug. Abraham Lincoln freed slaves in the hopes that they would just go back to Africa.
He actually offered to buy them a country. He actually offered to buy them a country in South America, where there were already a few countries that had become freed because the slaves revolted and took over the country. So he actually offered to buy them a country.
Mind you, this was after his federal troops came down into the South and said, "Hey, if you fight for us, we'll grant you freedom and give you this, and this, and this. We'll make sure that your families are taken care of. All you have to do is come fight for the Union." So here are these slaves who all their lives was praying, "Man, if I get one chance. And their one chance came. And it came to, "Hey, come fight for us. We'll take care of you and your family. And, you get to kill white folks." Okay, so you guys stay here. I'm going to go kill some white folks and I'm going to come back. We're going to have a good life. We're going to have land. We're going to have money. We're going to have everything we need to live a nice, fair, free life here in this country, because this is what they're promising us. Well, come to find out, either they were killed, and when they were killed, their families received nothing, or they survived and in a sense still received nothing. Half of them, more than half of them, didn't even get paid for their service.
Again, the government makes a treaty, makes a law. Everybody says, "Oh, well, we're following the law." They made a law, and after they did what they agreed to, they get nothing. The treaty is broken, the law is dissolved, and oops, sorry, my bad. Now, I did want to say something about a comment I made earlier. I do believe that there should be some type of reparations. I don't necessarily think that it should be monetary. And the reason is because if we were talking about reparations, and the first ones that would have to have the reparations would be the Native Americans. And by the time you're done giving them back all their land, there's absolutely no money left to give. Now,
or land.
Now, with that said, I'm pretty sure the Native Americans would perfectly fine with sharing it with people that want to, be love and love the land. With that said, can we just start with admitting our wrongs? That alone could start being reparations. Like, I'll give you an example. Some government officials, not going to name names, we're talking about getting rid of slavery in our history books because it didn't make America look good. But that's the thing. It's our history. You want to protect the South, but you don't want to protect what they fought for. Not just that, but on top of that, even now, look, the best example that I can give is even today, we glorify the atrocities that were committed by the country. Look at the military. The military, from the beginning, from the inception of the American military, one of their sole purposes was to destroy Native Americans and enslave Africans. What do they turn around and do? If you look at most of the look at their airplanes. We've got the Chinook. We've got the what is it? The Tomahawk. We've got the what's the other one? It always slips my the Apache helicopter. Why are they naming their helicopters over or Native American names? Because that's still the U.S. government and the military saying, hey, we killed them. Look at what we did. We took care of them. Why not admit the atrocities that have been committed with the country? If we can admit those atrocities, we can start moving forward. We can finally have those people that are saying, oh, racism does not exist. Just admit, yeah, it's there. And it's a problem.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and answer that for you. And it's simple. Because if they were to acknowledge these things, if they were to say, hey, we are aware of these things, then the next thing they would have to do is hold accountability for them, which is something they are not willing to do. Over, like you said, 200 years, nothing. Not even an acknowledgement. But to those that say that systemic racism isn't real, that say racism doesn't exist, I will tell you this. The city of Austin just a couple months ago was presented with a bill, and a part of that bill was the fact that the city of Austin had to acknowledge the systemic racism that this city had imposed on those who are minorities. And it passed, and the city did that. So, to anyone, and Odie knows who I'm talking to, that says that systemic racism ain't real, I can pull up and show you that the city of Austin admitted that systemic racism was a contributing factor here in the city of Austin.
With that said, why don't we move forward? I know that we were wanting to talk a little bit about a few court cases. We've got a really important one going on right now, and I really want to get to talk to some of the ones in history, to some of the more current ones, so that we could point out a lot of the similarities. One of the ones that I've been really eager to talk about, I mentioned him in another video, and I didn't want him to be just a footnote, because I really think that he didn't get the chance to show just how much. I mean, he did a lot, but he could have done so much more, is Medgar Evers. For those of you that have never heard of Medgar Evers, he was a civil rights activist. He was actually the secretary to the NAACP. And he was shot dead in cold blood from behind right on his driveway on June 12th, 1963. One thing I will say, which I loved, it's like, and I'm not in any way trying to shortcome his death. I wish he would have not had to go through that. But the irony of it is that when he was killed, he was holding shirts that he had just printed that said "Jim Crow must go," and I thought that was awesome that, even to his last breath, he was working on getting rid of the Jim Crow laws and trying to do something um, you know for civil rights. Now, what's really crazy about this case, by the way, I wanted to throw out there, anybody that wants to learn more about it, there is a movie. It is a movie, so it is, there are certain discrepancies on it, but it's still a really good movie, and a lot of it is still really, really accurate. It's called Ghosts of Mississippi, and it's about the Medgar Evers story. So I really recommend. That's how I first found out about it. I watched the movie. I thought it was a made up story. I went online. I started reading about him, and I was like, "What? How in the world did no one ever teach us about him in school?" Now, the guy that killed Medgar Evers, um, what was his name? Again, guys, I apologize, but I am really bad with names. I think his name was Della Ray. I can't remember his name. Honestly, his name isn't important. I could care less. I'm not gonna name a racist, but this guy never hit it. The same night he killed him, he went and bragged about it. He went and bragged about it. He talked about it. He pretty much told everybody, "Oh, Beckwith, Byron Della Beckwith, that was his name." I knew it was going to come back to me. He killed him in cold blood. Um, did not hide it, admitted it, said, "Yeah, I did it." And guess what? When he went to court in 1963, he was acquitted of all charges.
Oh, of course.
Um, he actually, it was not an acquittal. It was more of a stale. What is it called? They couldn't reach a decision. So he was retried in 1990, in the 1990s. He did end up going to jail for the murder. Here's the craziest thing about it. He wasn't the only one. He was the only one who killed, but he actually tried to do it again. After he got away with it, he served time in jail for plotting to kill another civil rights activist. And to me, that it might sound like a long time ago, 1963, but it hasn't even been 100 years, guys. It's been about 60 years, and that it hasn't changed. This is just the first case that we're going to talk about. So in his case, in 1963, all of the jurors were, drum roll, white. All of the jurors were white. Remember, it's supposed to be of your peers. None of the jurors were black. And he was found innocent. It's crazy. Now, I will say this: when Medgar Evers was killed, he was honored. He was given a veteran's burial. He was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. But even that, even when the government stepped in to do that, the reason they did that was to prevent riots, because they knew that. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, because
I was going to say, because they knew that, once this guy was acquitted of his death, there would be riots. So preemptively, they honored him as a hero. Just again, okay, we're giving you your hero. Now shut up and let this guy go free.
And essentially, that's always how it is. And going back to what you were saying about the jurors being an all-white jury, I mean, it kind of goes back to the same thing that's kind of happening now. If you can suppress the amount of people who can register the vote. You can control who gets a summons for jury duty. Now, if you can somehow keep those off the jury that would be impartial, that would be I'm just going to leave it at impartial, and those that value human life. It's easier for those who are on the same side of you politically to get away with things. People that believe in the same beliefs as you can get away with certain things. And like Odie was saying, it's a lot of things that are similar to today that are happening. And we all know about the voter suppression that's going on in the 43 states in this country. We all know that this is all based from the lies of one person who couldn't admit defeat. And it's also stemmed from an election in which election boards, federal agencies have said was the most secure election. It just had a bigger turnout than before because people really wanted their voices to be heard. And like I said last time, this supposed voter fraud, which had no proof, which still got laws drawn up and passed faster than any type of rights for those who lost a life to a mass shooting, or faster than laws to come up to protect our Asian Americans. And this is why we as a people, this is why we take to the streets and we use our voices, because if this is happening in broad daylight in front of people with all the social media stuff that's happening and it's posting and it's there, and governments are still not taking action.
So for those of you that don't know what Mike was referencing, I don't want to just glance over it. I want to make sure that we address it. In a lot of states, in the majority of states, the way that jurors are picked is by those who are registered to vote. So if you suppress voting rights, if you make it harder for someone to vote or someone to register to vote, then they're not going to register. If you make it harder for me to vote, then there's no incentive for me to be registered to vote. If I'm not registered to vote in those states, then I'm not going to be able to serve in the jury, which means that our juries are polluted with only people that have the same views. Now, remember, this was 1963. We're going to fast forward a little bit. We're going to fast forward now to 1980. This is something that was never taught to me in school. This is something that was never taught to me in college. The 1980 Miami Riots. So if you've heard of it, I want you to put a comment that you knew about this, because I didn't know about it until I did research, and it's crazy that no one ever tells us these things. So in 1980, there was a man by the name of Arthur McDuffie. Now, Arthur McDuffie was an insurance salesman, and he was an African American, a black man. Now, on December 21st of 1979, right before Christmas, Mr. Duffy was murdered by 8 Miami police officers. Now, listen to that, 8. So before I go on, I want to address Mr. Duffy, because I want to make sure that we're not accused of being biased. Mr. Duffy had a lot of unpaid tickets at the time, speeding tickets. He had a motorcycle and he liked to go fast. So, because of his unpaid speeding tickets, his driver's license was suspended. On the night that he was killed, the police officers flashed the lights and he attempted to get away. So, he led them on an 8-minute high-speed chase. And remember, they're driving cars. He's on a bike. When they try to ram him with the car, he pulls up next to the police officer and says, "I give up. I'm going to pull over." He pulls over. The police officer goes, tears off his helmet, and starts beating him. The other 7 police officers jump in with their batons and beat him. Now, to cover their tracks, they run over his motorcycle with one of the patrol cars. They break the gauges of the motorcycle with their batons, and the report that all 8 filed was that he had an accident at a high speed, and that's how he died. So, of course, it wasn't until the coroner came back and said, this man's got a 10-inch crack on his skull. And there is no way in heaven, earth, or hell that he could have gotten a 10-inch crack on his skull. Two of the police officers confessed. So I want you to hear this, guys. 2 of the police officers confessed. One of them confessed. This is the most insane thing about the case. One of them confessed he was the one that started striking Mr. Duffy. That after he was dead, they stole his watch. They took his money, and they left him on the floor. The other police officer confessed, saying, yeah, I was the one that drove over the motorcycle. We figured if we made it look like it was an accident, we'd get away with it. Guess what happened? All 8 white police officers were acquitted by an all-white jury. Now, if that's not racism, then you tell me what is. This man didn't deserve to die. You know, yeah, he was speeding. Yeah, he tried to evade, but he didn't have any criminal past. Just the speeding tickets. He didn't just die. He was brutally murdered by 8 people. Like, I need you to understand the idea of that, guys. I know that nowadays with our superheroes and with Captain America taking on an army, you tend to assume that, oh, that's not that bad. But even Bruce Lee wouldn't be able to handle 8 cops with batons hitting them at the same time. There was no way that a normal average person could have survived that. The worst part about it is that in 1981, McDuffie's family settled a civil lawsuit for $1.1 million with the city of Miami, and the city of Miami didn't have to admit that they did anything wrong.
That's sad. That's so
you
sad.
Guys, I know I'm laughing, but it's not a laughter of funny. It's a laughter of just complete bafflement about the whole concept that you don't have to admit this again, this reparation, this way of trying to fix it by admitting, hey, we did wrong.
And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, just accountability. You know, like you said, you had two of them that admitted to it, and they were still all acquitted. Like, how do you acquit people who you look? Tom Coleman got 40 people convicted just off of his word. And you're telling me that this confession didn't get any of them convicted? Not understand it. So going back to the 1980 Miami riots, like Odie was saying, the results of those riots ended up with 18 people dying, 350 people injured, and 600 people arrested.
And I think it was $100 million worth of damage.
Yes, $100 million worth of property damage.
$100 million worth of property damage. And you know, the thing that they're going to say, because I hate when I hear this, is, oh, well, why do they have to riot? Because of injustice. What was the first two episodes that we filmed? I kept saying the phrase, the voice of the unheard is violence. When the medical examiner says he testified on the stand, they cracked Mr. Duffy's skull like an egg. How can you not riot when the people that did that
get to go home? And you would think it would get, after that, it would be a lesson, a turning point, an opening to some dialogue into how police interact with people and how the justice system, quote unquote, works. But it did not. 12 years later, mind you, now think about that. 12 years from that incident to the next. The LA riots. We all know about the LA. Well, for those that don't know about the LA riots, the LA riots started when a man by the name of Rodney King, which I brought up in the very first episode, the very first talking point that we ever had on the Understanding Room, was this. Rodney King, this man, and for the sake of transparency, we will be completely honest about it. He was in a high-speed chase with police. He was in a car that was evading by police. He was the driver, was he not?
Well, he was a driver with two passengers.
He was the driver. Okay, so he was the driver. The police attempted to pull him over. He took off. Eventually, they stopped the vehicle. And when they pulled him out of the vehicle, again, nightsticks, and started beating this man to within an inch of his life. If you want to know more about it, go back and watch the first episode. We talk about it more in depth there. But again, these officers, who witnesses that were there were on the stand testifying that they were saying racial slurs, calling him all kinds of names, called him a monkey, called him all kinds of things. And once again, all of them were acquitted. And you got to understand, like I previously said, this was only 12 years from the previous incident in Miami. So you got to understand that people were at that point now where they were like, you know what? We saw you guys fail the first time. We're going to give you a chance and see if justice is going to prevail. And it did not. It failed yet again. And the same men that took it upon themselves to go beat a man, a human, got to go home. And it's like, I was reading something today, and it was talking about the Chauvin trial and how he was so nonchalant about how he was just laying on George Floyd. And one person commented, it's like they don't see us as human. And that's a sad reality. They really, there are times where we do get treated less than human. And the sad fact of they really do believe that I can do this and get away with it because I'm a cop, or because I'm white, or because whatever they think, they do have that belief that they're going to get away with it. You know what I mean? Like, even when the evidence is stacked against you, you really do believe you're going to get away with it. Now, we'll get into the Chauvin trial a little bit later on in the show, but right now, let's look at the LA riots.
So on the LA riots, there were 63 people killed, 2,383 people injured, more than 12,000 arrested, and over $1 billion worth of damage. That's a hell of a lot. And again, you say, I wanted to address something that you said. They see us as animals. They justify that view when there are riots, without realizing that the riots are caused by them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even an animal, I'm not comparing us to animals, but even an animal would have tries to fight when he's cornered, and we're humans. And instead of saying, hey, they gave us another shot after the 1980 riot, let's try to fix this. Nope, did it again. Yeah.
I mean, what does it really take? You know what I mean? Like, and it's like we always say, accountability, acknowledgement, and accountability. We're not asking for a whole lot. We just want the people that are accountable to be held accountable, because when we do wrong, we're held accountable for our actions. So why is it that those that wear a badge aren't held accountable for their actions?
Yep. I mean, and the excuse that they always use is, oh, well, they were criminals. But we've talked about that before. How many? Okay, I don't know if anybody has seen the video of this Karen, but I can't remember her name. An anti-masker that's been arrested like 4 or 5 times. In one of the videos, the officer, when she says the name, he even goes, oh, yeah, I've heard of you. The police, she's in a different city, and the police have already heard of her, and yet they're still holding her hands, walking her into the patrol. She's breaking the law. She's trying to slap them. She's trying to pull away from them. She's telling them, you're violating my rights. You're violating my rights. And that's not a criminal. I mean, as far as I know, I've never been arrested. I've never had handcuffs placed on me. So I'm not a criminal. She's been arrested more times than me. She's got more street cred than I do. But, you know, I'm sure I wouldn't get treated like that.
Absolutely. I mean, okay. I'm glad you brought this up because there's a comparison that I wanted to bring up. So I watched a lot of body cam footages because I like to stay transparent and I like to see the interactions of police and people, and I like to see. A lot of times I try to give the police a benefit of the doubt because I try not to be as biased as a lot of people think that I am. I try to see both sides of it. And so I watched 2 videos this week. And one was from Michigan where 2 state troopers pull over this guy in a truck. Supposedly for speeding. He went around a car. He was trying to get home for dinner with his family. So that they pull him over. The whole time they're talking to him. He's getting all their information from him, for them, and they ask him for his registration. Now, understandable on the initial reaction from the state troopers, because when he opened his center console to get his registration, there was a firearm there. Immediately, both these state troopers drew their guns and called him everything but a child of God. One of them said, and I'm not directly quoting, but I'm paraphrasing, he said something to the effect of, "If you move, I'll blow your mother head off." So this guy is sitting there like, wait, what did I do? Like, hold on, wait. Everybody relax. And he's got guns drawn to his head through both windows. They pull him out. They handcuff him. They search him. They search his truck. No, what else do you have in there? Do you have anything else in there? And I mean, it was like a 20-minute ordeal. You know what I mean? When they could have simply said, "Hey, we're just going to remove you from the car, remove the firearm from the car," because I've been through that similarly. But when I got stopped, I did not alert them that I had a firearm in the car. It wasn't until he started asking me questions and I told him yes. Even then, and now this is in Georgia, a Georgia State Patrol pulled me over. And I did tell him after he asked, "Hey, I do have a firearm in the car." He asked me where it was. I told him where it was. He simply said, "Keep your hands on the steering wheel. I'm going to open your door and you're going to get out. You're going to take your left foot out first. You're going to keep one hand on top of the hood. You're going to take the other arm out." He then gave me specific directions and he got me out of my car, made me place my hands on the hood till he had other people come. He took the firearm from my car. The other guy took the firearm from my car, unloaded it, put it in his car, and I was allowed to sit back in my car until the traffic stop was complete. After that, they ran my name, saw that I had nothing, and I was able to carry my firearm. They gave it back to me and told me, "Hey, simply just don't load it while we're here." Cool, no problem. Now, the way they treated this man, understandable initially, but the fact that, one, he was in a calm demeanor, he was complying with everything you said. When you told him to put his hands up, he put his hands up. There was absolutely no reason for you to treat him the way you did. Now, getting to the end of this, his mother pulls up and asks them, "Why are you in handcuffs?" they point a gun at you, and she loses her mind because you pointed a gun at this kid's head, and she says verbatim, "Do you know all the stuff that's going on these days? That's why I'm upset. He's a good kid. He's never been in any trouble. He has his concealed weapons permit, you know, and had you run his information, you would have seen that, because that's the first thing that pops up when you have a concealed weapons permit. It pops up that you have a concealed weapons permit. So again, initially, I understand there's a firearm there. It's a tense situation. You don't know what's going on. Okay, but if you are the person that's supposed to be in control, stay in control. You escalating the situation doesn't make it better, right? Now, second video I saw, and I have spoken with you about this one, was the body cam footage of the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. These two men chase down and shoot at point blank a man 3 times with a shotgun. The police show up. There's a shotgun in the front seat, and there's a revolver in the front seat. And George McMichael he's just hanging around the front seat, chilling, talking to the cops. They treat him with respect. They don't call him all kinds of names. They don't say, "I'm going to blow your mother head off if you move." And they acknowledge it several times. Hey, there's a loaded revolver in the front seat. Not one person. And then when they finally went to go get it, they were just like, "Hey, can somebody just go get that revolver out of the front seat?" It was a calm reaction. And it's night and day differences. How it's the same concept, but just two different things. One person was just a guy trying to get home to his family to have dinner. Another was a person who just murdered another human being.
The closest I've ever felt to feeling white privilege wasn't even in my own country. I was visiting my family in Mexico. My cousin says it was around 10 p.m. and he says, "Hey, you hungry? I know this place that makes some good burgers. Let's go get some." We're driving down the street, and the Mexican Marines, those of you that aren't familiar with Reynosa in Monterrey, there's a lot of cartels there. So they do have normal police, but most of the times it's the Marines, the Mexican Marines that are patrolling. We get stopped. I have green lasers, like those high-powered military lasers, all over us. And when they first encountered us, he yells, in Spanish, "Get the out of there, out of the truck." Everybody had guns on us. They come up to me. They come up to my cousins. They're interviewing us together. They ask us for identification. I pull out my passport. As soon as they see that I have an American passport, the one of the Marines says, "Oh, come with me, sir." Takes me to the back of the truck, away from my cousins. He's very polite. "Thank you, Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez, what are you doing here?" "Well, I'm here visiting my family. These are my cousins." "Mr. Perez, what's going on? Why are you all out at this time of night?" "Hey, we were hungry. I'm fat. I want a burger." Super polite. I had a tin with about $200 worth of Mexican money. He sees it, counts it, gives it back to me, asks me if he can see my phone. I unlock it for him. Always super polite. I get back into the truck. I see that he turns around, says something to the other ones, and they get on their truck and leave. And I get back in my truck and I tell my cousins, "Oh man, these guys treated me better than the police over there in the States do." And he says, "Because you're American. Because you're a gringo. They've already gotten so many complaints about the Marines being too mean to Americans. So now they're being nicer." And he goes, "We're lucky you came with us. Had you not come with us, we probably would have gotten beat up, probably wouldn't gotten something stolen from us." Um, for those of you that don't know how racism feels, for those of you that think that racism doesn't exist, that's the comparison. What Mike is trying to describe is the comparison. I shouldn't have to feel like an American only when I'm not in America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's crazy that here in America, where we have rights, liberties, there's still an inequality, even though it is written in several laws that there should not and cannot be disparages between people just because of the color of their skin and all these other things. And it still happens. And that's going to bring me to my next point. We talked a little bit earlier about voting. And the question that I keep coming up with is, with 43 states able to make all these changes in voting laws, why is it that the Constitution has so many gaps or loopholes to where these changes can be made? Because like I said, the laws in Georgia that were changed, were a good majority of them were exact things that the former president wanted Georgia to do in the previous election. And now those are laws. Like, how scary is that? Like, just because you don't like something, we're going to change it. We're going to make it a different law. We're going to make it the way we want it. So next time, if we want this to happen, we got it. We can make it do like that. Like, how is that not undermining the people's will? How is that not undermining the people's voices? You're taking away people's voices by giving the government the ability to come in and change the result.
I mentioned it last week, and I'm going to say it again. And I recommend, if any of you all want to look into it, or if you are interested in us doing a video on it, let us know. But a lot of people say that this country's a democracy. There's other people that say, nope, it's a republic. Honestly, it's a little bit of both. We're a republic democracy or a democratic republic, by name only. Because when one man wants these changes done and they get done, that's the definition of an oligarchy. When a select few are making the decisions for all the people. So again, it goes back to transparency. Don't feed me poo and tell me that it's chocolate.
Absolutely.
If we're going to treat it if we're going to talk about the government, then let's call the government what it is, because it's not behaving as a democracy or as a republic. It's behaving as an oligarchy.
And like you said, we're supposedly a democratic republic, and yet we we have all of these challenges, which to a point should not even be challenges, because like I said previously, they are written into these laws, and it seems like at every chance these laws get changed, or they get amended, or they get some sort of alteration of the previous policies that were in place. I mean, I'm going to take it back to a little bit of history here. There was a congressman by the name of Strom Thurmond. This man was so opposed to civil rights and the rights of voting to African Americans that he 24-hour and was it 24-hour and 18-minute filibuster
Mm-hmm.
in order to prevent the bill from passing.
And was proud of it too. Was telling, by the way, he was being interviewed afterwards and was telling the interviewer that he didn't eat anything for 48 hours, so he knew his bowels were empty and he'd be able to speak for 24 hours. Imagine how racist you have to be that you'd starve yourself for 2 days so that you can talk for 24 hours for a third day just to prevent someone from voting.
Like, think about that for a second, people. Like, this man went to that extreme to prevent blacks from voting. And you're telling me that today there is no such thing, that people are not doing the same thing. You can't sit here and tell me that it doesn't still happen. It's history always repeats. It's going to continue to repeat. It's doing it now. And I always say, and I'm sorry if you get offended by what I'm about to say, for those who are ignorant enough to not know or not pay attention to history, you are not going to be smart enough to see it as it's happening and when it repeats itself.
And we're seeing it right now. Let's fast forward a little more. I know we wanted to get to this case, and it's a case that, thank you, Mike, you brought it to my attention. I can't believe I had not heard about it. And as I was reading it, it broke my heart because I feel close to this person, Mr. Kenneth Herrig. Mr. Kenneth Herrig and Miss Hannah Payne. For those of you that have not heard of this, Kenneth Herrig was a 62-year-old man. He was a diabetic. That's why I feel close to it. Now, if you don't have anybody that's diabetic in your family, I need you to understand diabetes isn't easy. We don't have an alarm that tells us, oh, ding, 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 your sugar's going to go high. I mean, we can kind of tell, but especially when your sugar drops, there's been times when my sugar drops and I'm like, sweetheart, I don't feel good. I don't feel well. There's something wrong with me. Thankfully, my sugar has never dropped while I'm driving. But what happened in this story in 2019, we fast forwarded again, 2019, 62-year-old Kenneth Herrig is driving home. He bumps into Hannah Payne. Literally, he hit her, not physically with his hands. He hit her car. It wasn't a major damage. Her car was not, damaged that much, but for whatever reason, he kept going. She calls 911. The 911 dispatch tells her, leave it alone. Don't chase him. Leave it to the police. This person decides, nah, I'm going to do this on my own. Chases down the 62-year-old man, corners him, starts beating him while he's still in his car. She's physically punching him while she's yelling, I'm gonna effing shoot you. I'm gonna effing kill you. Then keeps her promise and shoots him dead. And it's April of 2021, and she still hasn't gone to trial.
And here's the funny thing. After she shoots this man, she tells the 911 operator, oh, he shot himself with my gun. Lady, did you forget that you were in traffic in Atlanta? Like, did you did you space out and forget where you were? Like, people were not like just feet away from you when you got out of your vehicle with a handgun and started punching a 62-year-old man in the face, and then you shoot him in the chest?
Now, like Mike mentioned, there was a ton of witnesses. This happened in Atlanta in the middle of traffic. Most witnesses say that Mr. Herrick didn't even have a chance to react, that he seemed like he was out of it. Now, I can't say for sure. I'm not a medical examiner. I didn't, examine him. But by what they were describing, it sounded to me like his sugar was low. He might not have even known. He might not have even felt that he hit her car. This is a man that imagine if somebody corners you, cuts you off, parks their car in front of you, gets off, goes to your window, starts beating you, and you don't know why. Now, her family says, by the way, she's 21? I think she was 21 at the time, so she's probably like 22, 23 now. Her family says it wasn't a race issue. She would have shot anybody that did that. Number one, that doesn't justify Jack Diddley squat. No one should have died in that situation because no one attacked her. It is not self-defense if no one's attacking you. But the reality is, once again, it's a black elderly gentleman and a white girl, white kid that I want to give her the benefit of the doubt and say it's not a race issue, but how can it not be? Imagine
it's hard to.
Now listen to this, guys. She was given a bail. You want to tell them how much the bail was? Should I? 100,000. $100,000 for murdering a man. Given bail. Let's turn it around. Let's say a 20-year-old. We don't have to turn it around. We have, what was her name? What is her name? The girl that murdered her sex trafficker? Centoya Brown. Look at that. She was a 16-year-old girl that murdered a white 40-some-year-old man that was sex trafficking her. And she was called a prostitute. She was not given bail. She was called an animal. Now we flip it around. We've got this 21-year-old girl killed in plain daylight in the middle of a busy Atlanta street, a black gentleman, and now she's given bail. And she even tried to get her ankle monitor removed because, oh my God, it hurt.
Again, all of these people that we've discussed tonight are all people who got to go home, who got to spend another day with their family, who got to see another sunrise, another sunset, got to eat another meal, got to enjoy the simplicities of life as a human being, even after their actions caused another life to end. And that's going to bring me to our final point tonight, and that's the Derek Chauvin trial. And this week, well, we can start from the beginning. Like, this entire trial has it has its ups and downs, because you have to understand that amongst the witnesses was a 9-year-old and a 17-year-old. Now, I'm going to start with the 9-year-old first, because at 9 years old, we're taught that when you're in trouble, you call the police. And when you see a police officer, you do what they tell you to do. This 9-year-old witnessed a police officer inhumanely kill another man who she said that made her feel bad because it reminds her of her father. She has uncles, she has brothers. And at 9 years old, that is substantial in your development, especially in society. You're still trying to figure out your place in the world, and you're seeing this. Let's move on to a 17-year-old. Here you are, you're a year away from being able to go out into this world and make something of yourself, be somebody. And here you are witnessing this. If that doesn't give you a new level of anxiety going out into the world because you don't know what's going to happen, because the people who are supposed to be protecting you in your community and the people who look like me and you are the ones killing us. And now you're on trial, and you and your janky lawyer, who everyone seems to only think that the only reason he's doing this is for a paycheck. Because one, some of his questions aren't even relevant to what the hell is even going on. Two, nothing that you're presenting, you can talk about all the fentanyl, all the methamphetamine, all of the heart stuff you want. The fact is that George Floyd has a 99.9999999% chance of being alive if he would have just got his ass up off his neck and off of his body and let him sit up. The past 2 days of testimony have been nails in the coffin for his ass.
Oh man.
When you have a pulmonologist that can break down scientifically to the very second where he lost his breath and to the very second where he had his last second of life, when you have the medical examiner that says, yeah, the cause of death, I'm ruling it as a homicide, which means that the actions of a person caused this person to die.
Oh man, that the pulmonary pathologist, that guy's my new hero. I love that guy.
Yeah.
I loved the phrase that he said. I could sit, I go to church and sit on a wooden bench all every Sunday, and my buttocks isn't bruised. You're right. The defense lawyer is. Remember that the defense, all they have to do is prove, cause a doubt. The reality is that the prosecution is the one that has the burden of proof. So what the defense lawyers, what his game plan is right now is, let me try to cause as much doubt as possible. That's why he tries to keep bringing up the fentanyl. That's why he tries to keep bringing up the methamphetamine, the heart size, and the valve, obstructions that were present. But we've now had one pulmonary pathologist, very competent human being, and we've had two. I can't remember their title
Medical
today.
examiners?
medical examiners. I think they were pathologists as well, but I can't remember that were that testify today that were also extremely competent. That completely throws that theory out of the water. It completely puts. I love the fact that they explained exactly how a fentanyl overdose would work. In a fentanyl overdose, he would not have been as excited and as moving and as alert as he was inside the store. He would have been almost asleep. He would have knocked out and gone and passed away in his sweet, sweet slumber.
Absolutely. And here's one other thing I wanted to bring up was there's one point in which he was trying to bring up the fact that George Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs." Now, here's the issue with that. One, the amount of drugs that was in his system were significantly lower than those that were in DUI cases. Two, if you play out that entire scene, it does sound like he says, "I ain't do any drugs." He sounds like he's pleading for his life. And then all of a sudden he throws in, "I eat too many drugs." Makes no sense.
So here's the thing on that one, and you're gonna laugh a little bit about at me with this one, Mike. Mike knows me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm very particular with vocabulary sometimes. I don't like street speak. Like, I don't like the "I got this." I use it as a joke sometime, but in my normal speak, I'm gonna be as clear as I possibly can. So what it sounds like he says is, "I ain't take no drugs." Now, why is it so important to enunciate, and why do I hate vocabulary? Exactly because of that. If the moment that he tried to use it as a defense, if you've never ever heard of this, it's similar to a mondegrin. A mondegrin is when people hear a song and they hear the wrong verse, the wrong words. We've all done it where we think a song says one thing and then we look at the lyrics and we're like, "What? I didn't know it said that." And he's trying to play with people's ears. He's trying to use it to cast doubt. But again, when you're using something out of context, of course you're not going to understand it. Once you put it into context, now it destroys that narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his entire defense is just getting shredded. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if Monday morning he don't show up, or he does show up. He's just like, "Hey, Your Honor, I'm gonna go ahead and hit a SpongeBob. I'm out of here." You know what I mean? Because he ain't really got a whole lot to stand on at this point.
Now here's the thing I'm worried about. We aren't seeing him bring up a good case. We are seeing the prosecution, man. That prosecution team. There's one specific lawyer. I love the way he questions the questions, and I love the questions that they've created. They're doing a good job. But what if he's acquitted?
Exactly. Just like in the cases that we spoke on previously, all the evidence, all the testimony, and they were still acquitted. And just like in 1980, just like in 1992, I'm afraid 2021 is going to be the next riot. And I think it's going to be in Minneapolis. I don't even think it's just going to be just Minneapolis. I think as a nation, it's going to erupt. And if they thought last summer was bad, this summer is going to be worse if he gets acquitted.
And I just want to say, by no means, I hope and pray that no one takes this as us being in support of that. I am not in support of violence. I am supportive of peaceful resolution. But as we've stated before, and as we've said before, violence is a vocabulary. Violence is a form of a communication, and violence presents itself when there is no other way and there is no other option. And my hopes is that we can, with what Mike and I are trying to do and with what others are trying to do, we can have a dialogue and we can make sure that, again, we have that accountability. So, man, I'm hoping, man, every day. Today, I had to watch it sporadically. I didn't get to see the lady. I can't remember her name, but I loved her, but I couldn't get to see all of it. I just saw some of her testimony. But it's very concerning, man. It really truly is. Every time I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I don't know how to feel and how I would feel if justice isn't done.
Yes, and again, to back up his point, I am not one to say, let's go out and burn the city down. No, I mean, one, it's not beneficial, and only, like Odie said earlier, it only gives the police ammunition into why to treat us with
disdain,
and to come at us and as harsh as they are. If we can just keep it peaceful, we use our words, we speak our peace, but let them know we are not happy. We can use our voices, like he said last week. We can use our voices in many ways. And this is going to be a time where we're going to have to use this in a way that's going to be, one, loud, but at the same time in a way that doesn't give them a reason to come out in force. And saying that is not saying that they're not going to, because we all know what happens when we come together and we want to speak about inequalities. We all know how we're met. We all know how things went in January. We are not expecting that same level of passiveness. We should understand that it's not going to be as equal. But let's not give them ammunition. Let's not give them a reason to ramp up and be aggressive towards us. Here's one last thing I wanted to talk about. There was a officer in Dallas who was recently charged with 2 counts of capital murder. And my question for that, Odie, before we get out of here is, why do cops think that they are not accountable for their actions?
Well, you got to remember what you got to remember from the inception of policing. I think that's something that people forget. A police department didn't exist until it came to protecting the rich. And the way they were protecting the rich when police officers, when a police department first came into play, is by making sure slaves didn't run away, and by making sure that people that try to unionize and come together were brutally beaten and, discouraged. When the origin of a specific entity is so corrupted, in order for the corruption to completely disappear, there has to be systemic changing. To echo the Bible, where if the seed falls in good ground, then we get a good plant. If the seed falls in thorny ground, then it gets choked out. And that's exactly what is happening with police, in my opinion. The origin of it was always the thorny ground, so we have so many thorns. And I understand that we said it in other videos, and I'll say it again. I understand those of you that are good peace officers, those of you that are good police officers, thank you so much for putting your lives on the line. We appreciate you, but you can't shine until we get rid of the rest. You can't find the diamond until you get rid of the coal.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get rid of the coal by throwing more coal on it. You get rid of it by exposing it.
Acknowledging it is the beginning. We have to acknowledge it so that we can go ahead and take steps on how to rid it. And once we're able to rid it, we can then start to see change. Let's not forget, like I said in previous videos, police are there to protect us. They work for us, like Odie said. Who you think you're protecting and serving? That's us. And let's not forget that the acronym of COP stands for Community Oriented Policing. Community. That means that the people in the area in which you are serving should come first. No matter what happens, no matter the circumstance, your job isn't to be judge, jury, executioner. Your job is to be the person who enforces the law while treating people with dignity and respect. You're technically in a customer service job. No one goes, the police doesn't show up anywhere unless they're called. You're a customer service. It's like our job at BBVA. It's customer service. You don't like it all the time, but customers always right. You know what I mean?
Well, remember, you brought that up. I'm going to go into trainer mode. I'm going to go into trainer mode. Those of you out there, I hope you guys understand, because I hate that phrase. The customer's always right. And the way that I found a way to fix it. And the way that I've always said you fix that phrase is by working it around a little bit. The customer's not always right, but the customer always has the right. They have the right to feel, they have the right to express their feelings, because whatever they've lived up to that point gives them the narrative for their feelings. And this is what police officers need to understand. This is what people that say racism doesn't exist, inequality doesn't exist, needs to understand. We have the right to voice our ideas and our thoughts, because everything that we've lived up to this point gives us that right. And you, because you haven't lived them, doesn't give you the right to deny them. Just like it doesn't give me the right to deny my wife her good life and say, your opinion doesn't matter because you haven't lived street like me. I can't tell her that. I have to thank the universe and thank God that she didn't have that life. And I have to understand that when she views the world, she views it with a sight that hasn't been tainted like mine has.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we take that stain away? By washing it. And we wash it with the truth, with what we're doing right now, with having these conversations, with making people accountable. The police is not going to change. And we went through what? We went from the 1960s, 1960, 80s, 90s, 2010s, and now 2020s, and nothing has changed. Because no one has been made accountable.
Absolutely. And until accountability has been had and has been gained, it's going to continue to happen. It's going to continue to be around. It seems like every decade this happens. And I mean, just look at 2019 to 2020. How many, see, you know what I'm saying? And just in that 1 year, you got to think all of those lives that were gone, and no one's been held accountable for them. There's still no accountability for Sandra Bland. There's still no accountability for Breonna Taylor, Mike Ramos. None of these people.
Kenneth Herrig.
None of these people. And you're sitting here saying you're putting up all of this stuff around the Minneapolis courthouse because you're worried about this and you're worried about that. Well, if you hold people accountable, these things, you wouldn't have to worry about these things. If you hold people accountable, there will be less need to prepare for violence because you would know that the justice system is working. The justice system is working the way it's supposed to, then these things wouldn't be happening. The reason that you are preparing for these things is because you know just as well as I do that there's a good possibility this man just might get off.
I'm not gonna lie, that is a fear that I have. Has the defense done its job to prove to cast doubt? No. Is that going to be something that is considering? Let's hope. All we can do at this moment still is hope and keep our eyes peeled. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to say, Mike, but before we go, I did want to recommend. I found this documentary by accident, and I fell in love with it. It is very slow paced, so I apologize. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but if you want to get some food for thought, I would really recommend Exterminate All the Brutes on HBO Max. From the beginning, from when Christianity and the Western civilization started killing minorities and killing off, whole civilizations. Their excuse was they're brutes, they're beasts, they're animals, they're not human. And especially if for those of you that still feel like I can't understand racism because I don't think it exists, it will really paint a picture. It shows how racism is on the rise, not just in America, but in other countries. And unfortunately, how almost 1,000 years we've just repeating history over and over and over.
Absolutely. And like Odie said, if you have the opportunity and the time, please go check those out. I had an opportunity to look through them a little bit this week, and some pretty interesting information on there. If you just get a chance to check it out. Wasn't there? There was another one that you told me about too.
Yeah, this one, guys, I want you to watch it. I want you to watch it. I swear, when you get to that last episode, pay attention. It's called Q Into the Storm. We haven't spoken about QAnon. I honestly don't want to even speak about it because it's a ridiculous theory, a ridiculous, extremely ridiculous. I can't believe how it's gotten to the point that it's gotten. But if you want to find out, it tells you when it started. It tells you the evolution of QAnon, and 8chan. And it's a really, really good documentary that hopefully, for those of you that are on the fence about it, will put it into perspective.
Yeah. And you know, um, again, I'm not interested in talking about QAnon because I think it's just ridiculous, and I honestly think it's just some guy trolling a bunch of people who are just too moronic to think for themselves. So there's my spiel on QAnon. If you believe in this, you're an idiot. Sorry. Like, but okay, I'm gonna put this into perspective for you. Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, uh, a lot of stuff to cover tonight. I hope that the material that we covered tonight was informational. Um, by all means, like we say every week, do your research, understand what's going on around you. And one last thing I wanted to speak on is people, please be careful when you're out. Things are going crazy, people are acting out, and watch out for yourselves and each other. See something, say something. Just look out for one another. The amount of violence that's going on is just ridiculous, and it's hard to get things accomplished. It's hard for us to get a step further when people are conducting themselves in these ways that are taking us a step backwards. Um, there's no need for it. Like, there's no reason that we can't sit around and have dialogue and be respectful to each other. And again, with the QAnon things, I'm just gonna say this. And if it offends you, it is what it is. Stop making stupid people famous. Like, seriously. Can we stop? There's so much going on in the world. So many things that need our attention. And we're constantly thinking about and talking about this person, that person, this person, that person. It is what it is. Let's think about how we're gonna bring unity to each other, how we're going to bring peace. If we can focus on that for a little bit. Um, we definitely have a lot of room to grow as a people. We definitely have a lot of problems that need to be resolved. And like Odie said, we're 5, 6 decades in, and there's still no change to things that have been talked about decades ago. So hopefully we can start seeing some progress soon. And Odie, you got anything else?
I'll end with this. I'm going to go into my preacher mode again. And I'm going to say, guys, especially if you're Christian out there, um, Christian belief is that one man spilled his blood to save us all. Um, Christians believe that this is the new promised land, right? That's why we did the manifest destiny, because this was the land that God had promised us. We spilled a lot of blood to get it. Let's not let that blood go to waste. Let's make something of this country. Someone says, let's make America great again. I want to make America great for the first time. And the way we do it is not by brushing that blood into the sewers, into the gutters. It's by making sure that those that spilled their blood for the country, because of the country, have a say in what this country becomes.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk all the time about history. You know, it's time that we change the chapter of history by, you know, not scrapping it, but coming up, acknowledging it, discussing it, and talk about how we want to make a change from there, because we don't want the past to repeat itself. Um, until next time, people, everybody take care of yourselves. Let's all make good choices. Let's all continue to practice social distancing and taking care of each other, because we're all we got. And if we don't take care of each other, then who is? We already have a government who is all about making money and policies to divide us. Why don't we, the people that they're supposed to be serving, why don't we take the stand for once? Let's stand up, take this time to stand up and tell them that this is not what we're sent. This is, we don't feel represented. This is not what we sent you to represent us for. So let's use our voices. Let's get in contact with our senators and congressmen and let them know that we need legislation for things that are highly important: mental health, infrastructure, schools, making sure that we have adequate testing for the COVID, making sure that we have, all of the recommendations that we need in case this does get rampant again. And, let's just, again, take care of each other. And let's just remember that love is the most powerful thing in the universe. So until next time, everybody have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves, and try to stay cool, man, because it's starting to get hot. Oh, and one last thing. This weather is starting to get real severe. Everybody, please make sure you have plans. Make sure you have plenty of supplies. Have a plan. Have a strategy, and check on those who can't. Check on, don't have anyone to check on them. If you have elderly in your neighborhood, check on them. Make sure they're good. Make sure they're taken care of. Make sure they have a plan in case there's some weather that comes through your area. But other than that, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. To those who tune into us weekly, we really appreciate you. We appreciate your dedication. We appreciate your subscriptions. We will continue to come through every week and give you what we know and what we can pass on. And like Odie said, if you got any comments, please feel free to leave those comments down below. If there's a topic that you want us to talk about, if there's something that you don't agree with us on, please let us know so that we can talk about it. We are open for this dialogue. We are doing this because we want to have this dialogue. So feel free to comment. Again, you can follow me on Twitter. I will leave all my information down in the comment section below. If you have anything else, please just follow or comment and just let us know, and we'll be happy to get in contact with you, or we'll just talk about it in our next show. But until next time, people, again, make good choices, take care of each other. Y'all have a good weekend.